So I want to welcome everybody to the March 2025 meeting of the 1904 World's Fair Society. We've had our typical challenges with Zoom here or there because I think we've got a bad plug from them to begin with that started off us down trying to figure out cables and connections so the Zoom people can also see, and then getting this thing rebooted. So we're just going to go with this title screen here to begin with. I think you all know I'm Mike Truex, and this year is the 121st anniversary of the 1904 World's Fair and the 39th anniversary of our society. You know what that means next year? 40. How about that? Tonight we have another new presentation, again from a first-time presenter. I'll introduce him in a little while. That's 3 in a row for new speakers, new presenters. And we have a few very nice pieces of World's Fair memorabilia on the sign-in table. A souvenir piece of World's Fair glass, a little punch cup, a metal tray, unusual, and an aluminum covered notepad, all from 120 years ago at the fair. And if you didn't notice, we have a guest in the back of the room there, standing in front of the window. Prince Pulun is here. So he is available for selfies upon request. The gifts were all donated by Bud Robinson. A couple of quick administrative reminders. Please be sure and silence your cell phones. A reminder for all the Zoom attendees. How many we got, Doug, as of now? 20 odd?
They're all odd. 13.
13, okay. And he says they're all odd. And not only that, they're prime too. That 13 is a prime number. You can ask questions by entering them into the chat room of Zoom, and Doug will be monitoring that for either questions on the fly or at the end of the presentation. Please check out the Society's Facebook group page. There's over 7,700 members, and there's always questions and answers going on there. Also, I have some sad news to pass on. Oh, before that, check our Instagram account. There's over 1,100 followers, and we get lots of neat pictures put up there. And our society's website, where we post either in the Contact Us menu, or you can also see the buttons at the bottom, the links to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Now, I have some sad news to pass on. A long-term society member, Captain Jim Bloom, passed away on February 21st. He spent a career on the Mississippi and Ohio steamboats, rising to the rank of captain and captaining his steamboat up and down the rivers. His wife, Annie, is a historian, and she wrote 2 books about the SS Admiral that have been published. One of them is an Arcadia book, and another one was a different publisher. They're available on Amazon. There will be an obituary in the next bulletin. Finally, I hope everyone did sign up for the attendance prizes. And now I'd like to look back 121 years ago to Friday, March 11th, 1904. And Doug, we are recording, correct? I've got a reminder here that says make sure that. The fair's opening was only about 7 weeks away, and the fairgrounds were buzzing with construction. There was still an incredible amount of work remaining to be completed to finish the palaces and the foreign buildings and the state buildings and the pike, and make sure everything worked and all of the telephone poles and wires got buried underground or taken down one way or another. The model ticket office in the transportation building was looking for 7 perfect men to start their sales office. That never happened, did it? They would handle the ticket sales for the 21 railroad lines connecting on St. Louis transportation. The applicants had to be young and handsome and declare their innocence of profanity. Good luck. Fair officials announced that there would be a big automobile parade held at the fair in August. The AAA Auto Run, or tour, was going to come to St. Louis and contain cars from the big East Coast cities, including New York, Boston, and Baltimore, and other cities. This wasn't a race. This was leave early enough so you can get here on this all on the same day. And it was part of the Good Roads effort to improve roads and signage between cities, because especially here in the Midwest, they had to follow the roads in between fields, and there weren't any signs there. They tried dropping confetti so people could follow them. You know, the second car behind could follow them. That didn't work real good. I think birds picked up the confetti thinking it was bread, and it didn't last long. They'd arrive in St. Louis on the same day, and over 100 cars did arrive. I think 77 cars arrived, and they were joined by over 100 cars in St. Louis, and they paraded out to the fairgrounds and drove around the World's Fair grounds, not just in a single parade, but I think they ended up splitting up into about 6 or 7 different groups, because there's lots of neat pictures of, you know, people seeing a whole bunch of automobiles drive around the fairgrounds. So with that, I'd like to also make a special announcement that within the last 24 hours, Dr. Ma will, I'm sure, tell us about his special guest who has come through St. Louis. But we have a special guest who's dropped through St. Louis that has a connection to his presentation. And Zhao Ma is an associate professor of modern Chinese history and culture at Washington University. He is also head of the Chinese section. He has an MA and PhD degrees from Johns Hopkins. He teaches courses on 20th century Chinese history and culture and the history of U.S.-Chinese relations. He has often worked closely with the U.S. government officials and public media to advise them on U.S.-China relations. Dr. Ma.
Well, thank you, Mike. This is wonderful. And well, I have to make it clear. The last part of the introduction, talking about me working with U.S. government, you know, actually is I have been a fellow of the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations, which is a nonpartisan and nonprofit institution and home base in New York City. So working with that organization, I have a chance to talk to government officials and learn what they are doing, right? But I can promise you they never listen to professors, okay? And so that happened in the past, and I can 120% assure you that won't happen with the current administration, okay? So that's just make it very clear, right? So I am very honored to be here, you know, even though Washington University campus is just maybe less than half a mile away from here. But this is my first time to be here and talking to this specific group. And so I think I have 2 quick announcements, but before that, I want to just highlight 3 very special guests. And so just by the distance where they have to come over, right, to us. So the closest sort of the friends coming over to this event is my colleague, Professor Susan Brownell. Wave her hand, wave her hand. Yes, yes. Okay. Susan is a professor in the Department of Anthropology and History in UMSL. And so she is a world-class and renowned scholar on Chinese sport culture. And so she has multiple books on the Chinese Olympics and the international events in China and how those international events provide venues for the cultural diplomacy and the U.S.-China relations. So if you are interested, and today we talk about the World's Fair, but let's don't forget, in the same year, 121 years ago, you know, the St. Louis, we host not just World's Fair, but also Olympic Games. So if you want to understand that part of the history, so here's the expert. So, all right. And then is Lynette, right? Wave her hand, right? She come all the way from Dallas, Texas, right? Just for this event. Can you believe it, right? So I think it's, well, she has a personal connection to this event we're talking about today. And so because, well, that's your great, yes, tell everybody, yes. a Katharine Carl, I'm gonna show you the picture of a Katharine Carl, is a American artist. And but she has a very special contribution to this World's Fair. She was commissioned to paint the big, gigantic portrait of the Empress Dowager Cixi. Right. So that's the big connection over here. All right. So, all right. Thank you, Lynette, for coming. I look forward to, having lunch with you tomorrow and then show you the campus. All right. All right. And actually, I don't know if my third special guest is in Zoom room, and his name is Bruce. And then he is a WashU alumni. And so he is, as everybody here, or many of you here, he has his personal collection of all the World's Fair memorabilia. Right? And then he donated. No, I'll take it back. Okay, so he at least let us borrow some of his collections, for the exhibition I put together this time last year, right? And so what is very extraordinary is he is home based in Australia. So you can see how far, and right now he is actually in Antarctica. So I don't know if he it looks like he can send pictures to me. So which means there's internet service, right? Antarctica. So maybe he can show us the penguins, somewhere, the penguins going to join us over tonight. Yeah. So that's my three special guests. And so for me, I think I think one thing I want to say before I jump into today's topic is this is really wonderful, because I think here, the World's Fair, 121 years ago, it was both a global event, right? The United States invited more than 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen nations around the world to come over here and to see the American heartland. And then this is really the way for America to show its technological advancement, the trade expansion, and the beginning of American thinking about itself as a global empire, which is, I think this history doesn't repeat itself, but rhyme. We are in the same era to think about American as an empire, at least from the White House. Okay? And so on the one hand, World's Fair is a global event. On the other hand, this is a national event. So we do have money from the Congress that allow us to do everything we did over here. And also the multiple US federal agencies were involved in terms of getting people in the country, getting things around, putting together the state exhibitions, right? And so to show this is not just a event for St. Louis, but this is also a big event to highlight American as a young new nation. So it's a national event. At the same time, this is also a local event. So this is for St. Louis. And so for people living in the heartland of America, so this is really a wonderful opportunity to see the world around you and to see different culture, try different food, and and then imagine what this global community will look like, and then to imagine how America fits into this new world, right, in the 20th century. So that's all these events. So you can tell, even after 121 years, so that event still provide some kind of a great opportunity for all you guys here. Right, and so we can still celebrate the World's Fair, and we can use still as a way to help us build, and maybe how to say, to our sense of a community, and the drawing from history, but somehow we can, hopefully this will become a good moment for the community to come together. Right, so that's why I am very happy to be here, and I thank you very much for coming to tonight's events. And I mentioned to Mike that, for my exhibition, and we highlighted 6 individuals. These are all, not all Chinese, okay? These are all people who are somehow working for the Chinese delegation or have some kind of official business with the Chinese delegation. So we have 6 individuals. Tonight, I can only give you one story, which means what? You need to bring me back. Exactly. You need to bring me back, okay, for the other 5 different stories. All right. And and my second maybe announcement or something is after the exhibition last year, and my research team, you will see them in a picture in a moment. So we are still working on this whole history from a global history perspective. And so we are now putting together a bilingual illustrated history book, and so it will be published in the near future. And so I'm happy to bring those books over here for, sell you more copies, okay? And also, I do want to have a separate chapter just talking about you guys, okay? Not just people 121 years ago, their experience of coming to America and experiencing the whole World's Fair. I'm really interested in studying you guys, right? To see why you are so obsessed or fascinated with World's Fair. Okay, what do you have learned from all this? Okay, yes.
People have an ancestor or relative that might have gone to or seen or helped build the fair.
Okay, here we go. Yes. Okay. We can definitely have a family, quote unquote, family party, And so later in my presentation, you will see last year, my research team was able to find the great grandson of the vice commissioner of the Chinese delegation. Not that guy, okay, not the principal, not that guy, okay, his right-hand man, okay, we found him. So he is now a professor at UC Irvine, a renowned art historian and art critic, okay, and a Guggenheim fellow. So he was here last year. So and Lynette is over here. So I guess at a certain point, we need to have a family party, right? And just to bring all you back, and for some fun stuff, okay? And so that's why starting from right after my presentation, I'm gonna talk to you guys and interview you guys. And so some of your stories will come out in my book. Okay, so just make sure that you know. All right. So I guess for tonight and for things I want to talk about, I guess might give me 25 minutes because I already spent 15 minutes just introducing myself. Okay, and I guess what I want to do is I want to tell you the story of one extraordinary woman, an artist, and also through her experience, and we tell you the story of both inclusion and exclusion, right? So let's talk about that story. Okay. So first of all, let me just give you go through the mic, SOS. It's
left button or maybe the space bar should advance it.
Oh, here we go. Yes. Okay. Phew. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you a few pictures just to see not just the World's Fair is a community event, but also the Chinese delegation and the Chinese participation in the World's Fair is also part of the memory of this community in St. Louis. So first of all, this is a model of the Chinese official pavilion, built specifically for the St. Louis World's Fair. And so, the Chinese officials at the time, they had a really big negotiations because, 1900, it was not a good time for China. China was just coming out of the Boxer Uprising, and then China was occupied. The capital city was occupied by foreign powers for almost nearly half a year, right? So the government is on the brink of bankruptcy. So then for an international party like World's Fair, this is a big spending for the government, So that's why the government is trying to figure out how you can put out a big show to impress visitors, not necessarily creating a huge financial burden for the government. So what they come up with is they want to build a kind of a Chinese garden as well as a Chinese some kind of, this is modeled after the summer house of the Prince Pulun, the head of the Chinese delegation, And so they want to have just one floor, that will cut nearly 30% of the cost, okay? And also they want to make sure they don't want to bring all the workmen from China to do the work. They procure materials from locally, And so they did bring in a few Chinese laborers to do the final touch-up, okay? But other than that, this is all built in St. Louis, made in St. Louis, okay? So that's sort of the model of the Chinese official pavilion. And so this one was made by the Chinese Historical Society in St. Louis back in 2004 to commemorate the centennial of the World's Fair. So I believe you can still see the real one, in the Mercantile Library on the UMSL campus, the Jefferson Library. And so, you can check it out. But here is my idea: is my team they are doing the 3D scanning of all this model. So one day we're gonna put this on treadmill. You put on your goggle, right, and then you walk on the treadmill. And then you can walk around, right? So that's my idea. Don't keep it for me, okay? So if you, all right, that will contribute to my retirement account. That's for sure. So, and of course, the WashU played a very big role in this whole World's Fair, and so part of the WashU campus was turned into the fairground. And so the Brookings Hall over there is over here. That has been used as a central administrative building. And so actually, I'm going to show you a historical photo of the Chinese delegation. And so the scavenger hunt assignment for my students in my Chinese civilization class is to find where that photo was taken. So I'm going to leave the question to you guys, momentarily. So, but I can tell you, remember the Chinese pavilion I just showed you, okay? It was built on the Washington University campus, okay? And so actually with Google Map, we can tell you for sure it's right around here, right in front of our Sam Fox School of Architecture and Design. And so China was very happy to see that location for one specific reason, because it is right in front of the central administrative building, okay? And then it's next to the British official pavilion. So a sort of, China was very happy to see how the American host, sort of find this spot for China, right? So in a sense, is you put China not only on the front row, but also side by side with the great powers. So that's actually part of the reason why China decided to participate in this World's Fair, okay, as a way to kind of, highlight or showcase that despite the Boxer Uprising, everything else, and so China is an empire, is a modern nation, and embracing modernity and rejoining the international communities after the Boxer Uprising. Okay, we can talk about the Boxer Uprising in a moment. So that's the story. Okay, so next time you go to WashU campus, make sure that's the spot. Okay. Chinese pavilion. And so, of course, this place? Yes, the Holmes Lounge. Holmes Lounge, it's right after the Brookings Hall, right? So it's now more like a cafeteria area, but in the World's Fair, during the World's Fair, it was used as the ballroom, for all the dignitaries. Okay? So it's a very iconic space. Okay? So. And of course, here you go. This is where? This is art museum. This is art museum, and so you can see, so if you, I guess everybody here, you have a really deep knowledge of the World's Fair. So after years of so many different programs, put together by Max, by Mike and his team, right? So. I don't have to tell you all the World's Fair 101, Okay, and so the World's Fair has a few, I would call them a thematic galleries, transportation, machinery, fine arts. This is like a fine arts gallery. And so one of the several buildings, they making like a permanent, right? And so they still keep them over there as they become the landmarks of St. Louis, for the city and for the region. And so the Empress Dowager Cixi and her gigantic portrait was put on display in this building. And so in a way there are at least a couple of places. When we talk about the China's participation in the World's Fair, there are a couple of places you can find China. Place number one, of course, there's the Chinese official pavilion. Right? We just show you that. Number two is the Pike, the entertainment area. Right? So I know the next program for the society is you're going to take everybody over to the Pike, right? Yes, here we go. Yes, and so that's you will see. There's like a Chinese village. So the organizer, they commissioned Chinese merchants and have like a Chinese entertainment company, and brought in Chinese from California, right, to put together an interesting display of Chinese culture. So that's another place you can see. And in addition to that, you can also see the sort of these galleries, right? And sometimes you have the trading item commodities from China, and or the fine arts, books from China. So there are just many different places you can find China, not just all in one place. Okay, and so here we come to this point, So of course, the Empress Dowager Cixi was not here physically in America, right? And instead, her big picture, her big portrait arrived. And so we're going to have more stories about how this one was shipped all the way from the Forbidden City to the heartland of America, right? In a moment. So the Chinese officials really put out a big show, for the Empress Dowager Cixi. And number one, this one is really huge. I forgot the dimension. This is later you will see that. In my later PowerPoint, you can see how this compared to the life size of a human being. Okay, so this is a huge, gigantic portrait, and so with a frame and everything, and it was put at the center as a centerpiece in the fine arts gallery. And along with, and also in addition to just having a huge portrait, the Chinese officials, they also have a big party, So here is actually, on your right, the red one, the red piece, that is from my friend Bruce. Okay, so this is an invitation letter by the Chinese official delegation in the World's Fair, and to celebrate the 70th birthday of the Empress Dowager Cixi. It's a birthday party, okay? And so, so here you go. I want you to pay a very close attention to the face of the Empress Dowager Cixi. Right? So maybe starting with this one. This is the portrait rendition, okay? How she looks, okay? Can you guess how old she is from the portrait? Look like a 70? This, I can tell you, this is the very first, today when you pick your cell phone, you take a selfie, you can remove your wrinkles, right? You can, do a little bit touch over here and there, right? So I think this is the first one like this. All right. And all done by Lynette and your family. Okay, so, right. Right. So we're going to talk more about this. Why do this? Okay, why doing this? So, but so far you can tell this is the same time. So here we go. This is over there. That's the American artist Katharine Carl. And so you can see she dressed more or less like a Chinese court lady at the time. Right? And so over here at the center, that is Empress Dowager Cixi. The same woman, right? But you can tell this is in her 69, 68. Right? And so And then Empress Dowager Cixi was surrounded, okay, by the wives of all the foreign diplomats at the time. And so if I remember correctly, the one over here, this person here, is the wife of American minister in China, so like an American top diplomat in China. And so the reason why you have a Katharine Carl working specifically for for Empress Dowager Cixi is because Katharine Carl's brother is a diplomat stationed in Beijing. So through his brother, and then Empress Dowager Cixi want to find an artist to do this painting, right? So now, okay, she's in the court. So that's kind of the behind the scenes story.
Her feet bound.
You mean the Empress Dowager? No. Okay. Why? Because she's Manchu. She's not a Han Chinese. Okay? Only Han Chinese, they bound their feet. Okay? But the Manchu, there's ethnic minorities, So even though they are the ruling, whatever ethnic group, but they don't follow that kind of, practice. Okay?
That's what somebody just asked.
Right. So here we go. Okay. So this is giving a sense of what is going on with, with this, you can see the side by side, right? This painting as well as the real photo, right? And so that tells you something about the motivation for the Empress Dowager Cixi. Number one, why she wants to bring her gigantic portrait to St. Louis. Number two, why even she spent nearly 750,000 silver taels to sponsor all this Chinese delegation to come over to St. Louis for this big show, okay? Despite all the financial troubles, that kind of troubled the Chinese government at the time. So if you look into, okay, ready to see another rendition of the Empress Dowager Cixi?
Does she have on jade fingernails and?
Everything, okay? Everything you can imagine, so. The long fingernails, yeah, that's part of the Empress Dowager Cixi's favorite, because the long fingernails and well protected by the little thing there, that's to show how elegant and delicate you are, right? And because obviously it means you don't have to do all the work yourself, right? You're going to be served by your servants all the time, right? So that's a sign of power, sign of prestige, right? Sign of your highest social status and political status. So, ready to see another one? This is what Empress Dowager Cixi was in her mind when she decided, making all the decisions, why China should be part of this party. Okay. So this is a cartoon printed out, published by a French magazine, around 1900. At the time when there was an anti-foreign uprising in China. And so just to give you a little background of this anti-foreign uprising, we call this the Boxer uprising. These are people who, most of them, they are peasants, and so they come from North China. And also these are the people who see foreign presence as a mortal threat to Chinese civilization or to Chinese social and political order. Okay. And so these people start getting together right around 1899. Okay. And so in 1900 is full blown. Now, what they did at the time is they burned churches, they destroy railroad tracks, okay, and they burn pharmaceuticals selling Western medicine. Right? They kill missionaries as their family members, as well as Chinese converts. Okay? Of course, they besieged the foreign diplomat compounds in the capital city and in other major treaty ports. Right? So these are, we call them the Chinese boxers. Okay, and so the martial arts practitioners. Okay? And so because they do everything I just mentioned, right? And so then when the foreign diplomat compound was surrounded and besieged by the Chinese rebels, And so the foreigners call in reinforcement and rescue, from their mother countries. So eventually 9 countries contributed to the rescuing mission. Right? So these are the people who come to China, attack China, and occupy the capital city, and drove out the Chinese imperial household, right? And they kill, of course, many the Boxers. So on the one hand, okay, so we're going to talk about these Boxers a little bit more. On the one hand, it's sort of, this is an image trying to show, in the Western eyes, these Chinese peasant rebels, okay, as well as their, Chinese officials who are sympathized with the Chinese rebels. So the cartoon is trying to portray all these people as what? As a good guy or bad guys? Right. Okay. So I think that's a common visual language, right? When you have a cartoon like this, these are going to be the bad guys, right? Because you see it here, you can see, people, it's putting together, the body's putting together as like a barbecue, right? And then you look into, this is Empress Dowager Cixi, right? It's the same person, right? The same person. And so you will see the dagger, right? And then the blood and the dagger. And so the long fingernails, but over here is not a sign of elegance, but a sign of a savage, right? And also you see the facial expression. And then do you see the teeth over here? Right? So I think this is a really an interesting way to demonize the Chinese political leaders, right? As a way to demonize, or as a way to kind of just portray this whole Chinese people are a bunch of barbarians. And so that's the image populated in the international media. This is a French magazine, by the way, okay? So you will see, I don't know how many of you read French, okay? So this is there's a poem goes with, there's a poem goes with the portrait, okay? And so I asked my son, who's been using Duolingo to study French, and who is also studying French, for about 2 years, at Clayton High School and Merrimack, middle school. And so to help me translate this French poem, right? Of course, he can only do, like 10% of it. So this is all done by a WashU student. And so you will see that's what the poem is all about. Okay? So overall, okay, well, maybe let's take a step back. So of course, basically what we are dealing with is 2 narratives. One narrative is how Empress Dowager Cixi was portrayed internationally as that evil person, okay, representing everybody in China. And another narrative is there's all the reasons for Chinese to be so upset with foreign pressures at the time. Just to give you an example. So remember I mentioned one term, treaty ports, treaty ports. If you were a foreigner going to China at the time, and by the turn of the 20th century, number one, you are not responsible for Chinese law. Wherever you go, okay? Chinese law will not control you, okay? You can commit a crime, and you can go, right? So the Chinese law is, you are above Chinese law, any foreigner above Chinese law. Number 2 is if you have a trouble, okay, with a Chinese, and so that trouble will not be handled in a Chinese court. Instead, it will be handled in a foreign court by the foreign law, under the foreign law, right? So in a way, it's giving the foreigners the total immunity to this legal system, to the Chinese legal system. Number 3, if even 2 Chinese having a trouble, okay, if these 2 Chinese are living in a foreign controlled territory in China, even the Chinese are above Chinese law, okay? So that's another thing. It's a big blow to the Chinese sovereignty. Okay. Number 4, is you don't pay Chinese tax. All this foreign run business, you don't pay Chinese tax at all. Okay. And so that's sort of if you can just put yourself in the shoes of Chinese at the turn of the 20th century, right? What if every single port city in America, right, you have a Chinese warships over there, stationed over there, right, ready to attack you. And then our major industrial complex in this country, they were run by a Chinese syndicate or by whatever country's government, don't pay tax, right, and not responsible for the local laws and tax system. Right? And then anything happens between foreigner and Americans, again, America have no control whatsoever with them. So that's sort of the way you can start feeling, right, the pain of all those Chinese at the time. But of course, the China at the time, they didn't go to WTO or United Nations, right, to resolve all these problems, right? And so instead, they start this box uprising, trying to drive out all those foreigners. Right? So it ended up in a huge disaster for the country. Right, the country, the Chinese army was defeated. Chinese court was driven out of the capital city in exile for nearly a year, and then China paid a huge indemnity to all the major foreign powers who contributed to this international expedition rescue mission. And so, but again, this is just one story that tells you the background of Chinese participation in this whole World's Fair. So literally, there are, for both US and China, and there's a special purpose trying to bring China into the World's Fair. This one? Oh, anyway, you know that one? That movie? I promised my students at WashU, I said, this is going to be the most racist movie you're going to ever watch on a WashU campus. And they watch it. So, well, the reason why I want them to watch it is not because, I try to celebrate racism. It's just you can see how close they are, right? And so, I mean, the images, the ways you're trying to portray a foreigner as a alien other, right? As some kind of exotic animal, right? But also a beast, right? And so always remember the long fingernails, right, and the head, right, highly decorated, right, overly decorated, okay, and then on the China side is asexual. You don't necessarily tell the gender, right, but there's always the vulnerability of the white woman, and so they are potentially the victim of the scourge of the evil foreign influence. So that's kind of anyway. So if you have your grandchildren at WashU, don't tell them what I mentioned here, okay? Because this is their home assignment. They need to do a film and a visual analysis. Okay? Don't tell them everything I just mentioned to you guys. So you can tell how big it is, right? So this is anyway. Back to the story. The reason why the story of China's participation in the World's Fair is a story of inclusion. That story is on the U.S. side. So America was pretty late in this whole game of colonialism. Think about this. This is early 20th century. And so China signed the very first treaty with the British Empire in 1842, nearly 62 years before World's Fair, right? So you can imagine, there is the Western powers, especially European powers, and starting from early 19th century, right? They try to gobble up, try to take over land, resources, and everything from every corner of the world, right? Up until this point, 1900, they already spent nearly half a century doing all this, building their colonial empires. That's why we see the British Empire, they occupy nearly a quarter of the, right, everything we have, right? So if you think about it, where America is, when all this big colonial sort of adventure took place, what happened in America? Why we are the latecomers? Number one, Civil War. Number two, Reconstruction, right? Number three, some sense of isolationism. But again, the major shift by the turn of the 20th century, and that's the reason why President Donald Trump is a big fan of President McKinley, because President McKinley is the sort of the colonial guy, right? Starting having war with Mexico, the Spanish Empire, and taking American all the way to the Pacific Island, and eventually to East Asia. And so that's the story over there, okay? And so at the time when America started building its own colonial empire, right? And obviously, at the time, America is a two-ocean power. You have Pacific Ocean, you have the Atlantic Ocean, right? So where you can go the next? Naturally, Pacific Islands and East Asia. So China is the biggest country in East Asia. So in a way is the relationship between the rising American empire and a declining Chinese empire. This has become crucial to secure Americans' colonial interests in the world, and even vital to an American's future as a global empire in the 20th century. Okay, so at that moment, the American officials, they made it very clear the reason why Americans want to invite China to come over here for this World's Fair is, number one, America wants to have a good relations with Chinese government. Okay, number two, America wants to assure that America will support a independent Chinese government. But that's not because America loves China's independence or autonomous China, independent China, strong China, powerful China. It's because America don't want to see China to be occupied by others. Does it make sense? Okay, right? So the thing is, because you already have all these people, right? All these empires coming over to China, Russian, Japan, the British, the French, German, everybody, right? So America is pretty late. Right? So if America trying to fight over China with all these foreign powers, that'll be World War II or World War III. No, this is World War I. This is before World War I. Okay, so no way America couldn't win that. Right? So that's why America proposed the so-called, you can still hear the term, they call it open door policy. By open door policy, it means America trying to keep China united as one country, and then keep China open to all foreign powers. Not let China to be occupied by any single foreign power. Right? So that has become the cornerstone of American China policy for at least 50 years. So that policy come around this moment, the World's Fair. That's why we say the World's Fair, in part for us, right here is a local event, but it's a truly international and national event. Okay. So that's the American side. Okay. To really, this is a whole game of including China into this notion of, China as a part of this community of nations, right? And so we want to protect China's independence, but not as China's interest. This is an American interest. We're going to do this. And so that's the story of inclusion. On the China side, of course, China, after China was defeated during the Boxer uprising. Okay? And so China realized, well, you just have to do all different things in order to make yourself more capable of handling foreign pressures, right? And so the old Chinese way is not enough. We have to reform. We have to modernize, especially your industry, your technology, your army, your education, right? So China, right after the Boxer uprising, the first 10 years in the 20th century, is all reform. And so under the imperial Chinese government. And so Prince Pulun, the guy behind you over there, And so he is one of the imperial reformers. So when he came to the United States, he stayed in St. Louis for maybe, let's say altogether, he was in the United States for 2 months, but he stayed in St. Louis for about 20 days. And so the 20 days, in addition to 20 days over here, he traveled to, several Chicago, Buffalo, Philadelphia, New York City, Washington, and to see or to meet with US officials, industrialists, reformers, politicians, civic leaders, and he was even trying to recruit the American veterans to go to China and train the Chinese New Army. And so he's a reformer. Okay? So in a way is the Chinese government trying to use this opportunity as a way, number one, to remedy, okay, to repair China's relations with foreign powers, which was damaged by the Boxer uprising. Number two, it's all about face. It's all about a new image, right? So that's the reason why you see Empress Dowager is here, right? So she is really very conscientious that her image has been widely demonized just 4 years ago during the Boxer uprising. Okay? And then she, as the de facto leader of China, so she represents, right, the good face, the good image of China, the bad image of China. So that's why she decided, even though the government is, has under tremendous financial problems, okay, but she decided to come over here. No, she decided to send a delegation to come over here. And so it's trying to, this is a big diplomacy, trying to present China, represent China as somehow a modern nation. And then, on board with the Western notion of modernization. Okay? And then show China as an open country, open culture. We invite you to come over to China, for business and everything. Okay? So that's the main diplomatic purpose and a mission for the Chinese delegation. In that way, you can tell, but this is the story of all this kind of a Chinese participation. And so here I want to show you 2 photos. And what you will see here is pay attention to the one over here, this big box. What's inside? The big portrait, right? And so the Empress Dowager Cixi, well, again, think about this, at some point I just realized 1904, all right. So this is way before email, Twitter, right? Social media, Facebook, right? And then for the organizers in St. Louis, they have to communicate with people, business officials around the world, just to make sure you guys know this is a party, you want to come over here. And then you not just come over here by yourself, but also your stuff, right? Big and small. You have to bring them over here to the United States. Some of them come as insurance policy, right? Some of them has to pass through the customs. So this is a huge undertaking. Now I'm thinking about that. It's even when I have a conference, just think about maybe this is what you can do, right? Okay, later this year, you invite 10 of your friends from 5 countries to come to your house for a Thanksgiving dinner. So you can, and then everyone need to bring 3 things with them, right? So you can imagine what kind of work that would take, right? To bring all these people to your house. So then you multiply that by maybe 100 times or 1,000 times. That's how they're going to do this at World's Fair. So anyway, this is the interesting anecdote is when Empress Dowager Cixi decided, okay, here's my portrait. I'm going to send it to you to St. Louis. And she insisted, right? So my portrait has to be shipped all the way from the Forbidden City. This is I believe this is somewhere in North China. Okay, so it's just the big portrait starting its transcontinental, trans-Pacific journey. So you will see it over there. And then you will see, this is when it arrived in the United States. I don't know which city, okay? And so you will see that still this one over here. Empress Dowager Cixi insisted that her portrait has to be brought over to the United States standing upright. You cannot let it down. Why? Why? Why?
That's enough strength.
It's on the one hand, it's sort of like she's doing inspection tour, right? She is behind the curtain, right? She's looking at everybody, right? But more importantly, this is a Chinese culture, right? Or even culture everywhere is what kind of a body will be shipped lying down? A dead body, right? So it's not a good thing for her, right? So, when my team in China, some of my team members, they went to the first historical archives, which is the official archives of the Qing Dynasty. And so when they check out all the imperial documents about the Chinese participation in the St. Louis World's Fair, and they noticed that one big topic, with all the documents, hundreds of documents, and so nearly a third of the documents is all about the portrait. The Empress Dowager was very, very attentive to every single detail, how big it is, right? And then how are you going to transport my portrait? Who is going to be at the train station waiting for that, right? How are you going to ensure that my portrait will be from hand to hand properly with all the pomp and circumstance, with all the proper imperial rituals? So she is very careful, okay? And so you have all the paper trail of she asking about her portrait. And so let's see. I promise you 5 more minutes, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. So Susan, where are you? Okay, you're there. Yes, here we go. All right, so I think the World's Fair, as I mentioned at the beginning of today's talk, it is a very wonderful community event, and I'm really fortunate to have a community of scholars to work with me, for this whole exhibition. So you can see over here, and some of them are my students, they are WashU undergrad students, and some of them are my friends, they are professional historians or scholars. And also, I want to point out one specific person. And so here's a Simon Liang. And so he's a great grandson of the vice commissioner of the Chinese delegation. And so we were very happy to, so this is a photo of his great grandfather, right? And so right here. This is his great grandfather. So he's a true legendary. He's a true legendary. His name is Wang Kai. And so the grandfather, okay, he went to, he came to the United States at the age of 12 as a part of the Chinese education mission. This is a Chinese government-sponsored study abroad program. So they altogether recruited like 120 or 110, Chinese kids. They are all right around, 10, 11 years old. They were taken to the United States. The whole purpose is trying to make sure you understand American culture. You can speak the language, right? So eventually, when you finish your life, your experience, your journey in the United States, you came back to China, you can work for the China's modernization. Right. So Wang Kai went to Hartford, Connecticut, right? And then he went to the public school system all the way through high school. And then he went to Yale for about 2 or 3 years. And then the Chinese education mission was called back, because of a court struggle, like a partisan fight within the court. So they have to cancel the program. But, that's one of those guys, the early generation of Chinese students in America. And I also want to draw your attention. Can you see all pretty much, this is the Chinese delegation. they head by Wang Kai-ka, the vice commissioner. They arrived in St. Louis like nearly 6 months before the opening of the World's Fair, because they came here to supervise the construction of the Chinese pavilions. And so you can see from this photo, there are a few, I mean, it's easily to see Chinese, right? Because the clothes, right? But do you notice one Chinese guy who dressed differently? You see that one? There's one Chinese guy dressed differently. The front row, the far right. You see that guy? Okay. So he's Chinese, okay? But he is a law student studying in New York City. So again, he's very interesting. His name is Ouyang Qi, and so he's another Chinese, student. And so quite interesting because when you put these pictures together, you can see nearly a turning point of Chinese own history, right? As a country moving away from this imperial shadow and into a 20th century. Right? And so modernization and westernization has become the theme of China's sort of a long journey in the 20th century. So we were able to have this photo, and then we took Simon Liang and his mother and his brother, right? So we have a photo and the same spot. Right? And that's a truly a moment, very emotional moment for the family to be able to see where their family members, here 100 years ago. Okay, and also we are able to locate the residence of this Chinese delegation. Right? So on your right, it is the I forgot the street number. Okay, it's right across street from the Missouri History Museum, and I think they call it no, it's not Lindo. It's next to it, like a Goodfellow Boulevard, and so you can still visit that place if you like. And but it's a little bit sussy, and so but now you can see the Chinese delegation, the Wang Kai-ka's family, stay there with their servants for nearly 6 months, and so now it was turned into a black church. So again, with Google, right? We found it, and then we even have a program in the black church. So we talked to the the peoples there, and again, just see a little bit. Can you see these two things? How probably the sign over here, the arch over here. You see over here, right? And then you see 1, 2, there's 2 windows. 1, 2, there's 2 windows. After nearly 120 years, so there's a lot of expansion and everything, right? So, okay, and I guess, Mike, I will need another half an hour because I wanted to finish a part of my story. I mentioned that I have 2 parts of the story. Part 1 is the Chinese participation in World's Fair is a story of inclusion, but we also have to tell it is also the story of exclusion. By exclusion, it means, for China, the U.S. wanted to invite China, include China into this new map of colonialism and capitalism. So China is the vital link, right, future for the American expansion. But the question is, how about Chinese? Right. We talk about China as a country. Now let's talk about Chinese as people, because this is time. There's still something called the Chinese Exclusion Act. All right. So which means Chinese laborers were barred from entering the country, and for Chinese already in the country, they would not be allowed to become a naturalized U.S. citizens. And so what happened is this is what Susan is working on right now. Susan, you can come over here and tell the story next event, right? Okay, so I just give you a little bit like a spoiler, right? So the story is for Chinese, especially Chinese laborers and for Chinese merchants. When they come to St. Louis Rose Fair, at the border, they will be photographed. They will be fingerprinted. They have to post a $500 bond, right? And then they have to be given a special, like a certificate to enter the country and come to St. Louis. And they are not allowed to go anywhere. You just come to St. Louis and stay here. And when the fair is over, you have to go directly back to your own country. Right? And then in St. Louis, the Chinese, they cannot leave the fairground, right? And they have to stay in the fairground. And to leave the fairground, you have to ask for a special permission, right? And then you have to return to the fairground in 48 hours. Fail to return to the fairground in 48 hours, the Chinese will be considered as a fugitive, subjected to deportation. So that's the story of the Chinese. Okay, so you can see this is an interesting way. We like China because it's a future for the global capitalism, but we don't like Chinese because they are the threat to American labor force. So that's the story of the fair, as interesting episode, right, to help us understand the politics of inclusion and exclusion. Okay, so I guess Mike is ready to push me away, so I'm trying to.
Any questions? I'm sure there's at least a few questions from you.
Sure, yes.
Maybe a couple online.
One.
Okay. Question?
What year was that act enacted?
Is 1882. Is Susan is 1882, right? It's 1882. Yes, and then the act initially was put in place for 10 years. Okay, so according to the act, it targets specifically Chinese laborers, right? And so with especially people working in the gold mines and in the transcontinental railroads, right? So that's the story of the labor force. Okay, and then is 1892, it got expanded for another 10 years, and so initially it targeted all Chinese laborers, and then they have this exemption categories for Chinese diplomats, students, merchants, and who else? Servants. Okay, so they are exempted from this exclusion, which means these people, if you can prove who you are, right, you can be allowed to cross the border. So, but the examination is very tricky, So I mean, Susan have collected the documents from the U.S. Immigration Service, so you can literally see the documentations goes with immigrants as well as the questions they were asked at the border, right? Because everybody is how to say that you are innocent until proven guilty. That's our system, right? But in this case, is you are guilty until proven innocence. So if they notice you, for example, if they notice that you have a darker skin, which might be a sign of a labor, right? You have to work under this, right? So then they might say, hey, you are a labor, you are not a diplomat or whatever, right? So kick you back, kick you out, right? So if you have maybe a little bit like a callus on your hand or have a big hands, right? That might be a sign of labor, right? So there's all this kind of very elaborate. There's in the book by a very eminent Asian American historian, and his name is Erica Lee from University of Minnesota, and she coined the term is U.S. turned into a gatekeeping country by the turn of the 20th century. So we try to set up a gate to keep some people. We want to bring people in a certain way, but we also want to keep certain people deemed, unhealthy, right, uncivilized, whatever. We want to keep them out. So that's sort of you have this whole culture, not just an institution, a whole institution of exclusion, as well as a pervasive culture of exclusion, right, that kind of permeate through this entire federal immigration system.
That's no different than today with the people coming from the South.
That's all right. Okay, so All right. That's the topic for another meeting.
One of the key questions was, what was the blue item that the Dowager was holding in her lap?
What the
The
blue,
blue item she
On her
had
handkerchief?
underneath her hands?
really something blue?
Well, I've got it on the camera now.
Yes, I don't know which one, the blue, which one, blue item? This
The
one over
color,
here?
the color one.
Okay, this one over here, I guess. It's a handkerchief. Mhm. It's a handkerchief.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yes.
So in the train car, when it was, the painting was propped up, was it already in its frame or was the second car where the frame?
No, it's already in the frame. Mhm.
Repeat the question.
Right, it is, the question is, the painting already in the frame when it was transported from China, the capital city, to the United States or not. Okay, so it is in the frame. That's why it's pretty huge, right? If not in the frame, it's so hard to, keep it upright. Oh, so the question is, where is the painting now? That's a good question. So there's a journey for this painting. And so the Chinese government was a little bit upset, by the end of the World's Fair, when the Chinese government learned not everything is permanent. Right? So which means that the Chinese officials, they have to take this whole Chinese official pavilion apart. Right, so Chinese government, they came and built that one with the thinking that this will become a permanent gift, right, given by the Chinese government to the U.S. government, all right? But okay, and anyway, so the practice is we don't keep them, right? We just take them apart, and the people to come over and pick whatever you want, or pay a very small price, right? You get something out of everything. Okay, so the portrait, of course, is the centerpiece of all this Chinese delegation. So this portrait was given to the U.S. president at the time, I believe is Teddy Roosevelt, as a state gift by the Chinese government. Right? And so the U.S. government took it and then put that in the initial is the in one of those galleries in Washington D.C. in a national mall. And I don't know I forgot the order, right? It started from the Sackler Gallery, and then it's the American Museum of Art or Oriental art, whatever,
Part of this.
But now it's a part of the Smithsonian. Okay, and then that's not the whole story. Okay, the story is at a certain point about 30 years ago, and the National Museum of Taiwan. This in Taiwan, the National Museum of Taiwan. They want to do a little bit exhibition of all this. Okay, and maybe not the World's Fair, but maybe the Empress Dowager Cixi herself. Okay, so they loan this whole piece from the Smithsonian Institution, and then this whole piece again it'll go all the way from Washington D.C. to Taipei, and then after they finish their exhibition, the Taiwan, the Museum of Taiwan, they contact Smithsonian saying, "Do you really want this back? You guys never really put this up, for anybody. Okay, you're just sitting in a warehouse somewhere. So why don't you just give it to us, right? We really enjoy this whole piece, okay?" And then the Smithsonian Institution really evaluate that kind of request, right? And so you know what the answer is? Yes or no? Why not? Okay. Actually, it's not because this is ours, It is because it's not because it's a gift.
Politics and visuals.
It is a politics for sure, Exactly. That's the answer, okay? Because this is a state gift, by China to the United States. But the US does not recognize Taiwan as an independent country. All right, so if somehow we want to give this back to China, it has to go to the People's Republic of China. You cannot just give it to Taiwan. Okay. That's a tricky part, you know. So okay, in the end, so the story is well, we come back to Washington D.C. So today, if you will travel to D.C. and the Smithsonian Institution, and you know, they occasionally bring this out, you know, for exhibition, so you can still see it.
Doug, any more online?
Mhm.
Wasn't wasn't it alone somewhere and then it wasn't taking a very good care, so it needed extensive conservation?
I don't know that part. You know, talking about the conservation and you know, whether this piece of art has been damaged, you know, over this near like a century, and so any conservation involved in repairing, restoring this artwork. You know, well, for that question, I'm not able to answer. And actually, right after today's event, I'm gonna fly over to Columbus, Ohio, on Thursday, and we have a panel at the annual meeting of the Association for Asian Studies. And so the panel is all about the World's Fair. And one of my students, and she has been working on the portrait for nearly 2 years. And so that's her topic, you know, to just show the circulation of this, you know, this portrait as a part of the cultural diplomacy nearly for a century.
Another round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ma can stay up here and draw 3 names out. And I'm gonna trade places with you. And if the people would come up and the 3 gifts are right here. Take a gift and then come over here to the side where we can all stand together with Professor Ma. Professor Ma, would you like Pulun to be in the, would you like
Yes,
Pulun in the?
we invite our prince.
Could somebody in the back get the cutout of Prince Pulun and bring him up, please?
Let me work on this. All right, you sure it's a 3?
Yes.
I can do 2 and I pick 1 for myself. Okay. All right, so I'll try not to see it. Take number 1. You're gonna read it now?
Oh, you can read it if you want.
It's a Holly.
Childress.
C.
Holly
Yes,
Childress.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking questions.
Oh,
Okay. Which one you like?
That little cup is engraved with the World's Fair information, 1904.
How he works at the.
Where you want it? We have this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me
Is right
do the
foot.
second one, okay? All right.
Stands up a little straighter.
Chow. He works at the Great Museum.
We did research over there as well, you know?
I bet.
Holly, you
Oh.
kind of hold them up straight here.
Okay, so this is Steve. Steve,
Schmidt?
G, yes. There we go, yes.
That's me.
I can pretend it's you. Okay. All right, so the 3rd one, here, 1 to 3, here we go, this one. Okay, Dennis Crow.
Very photogenic.
There we go, all right.
Right.
Sure, there we go.
There are 3. Dennis, or did you put it back in? That's okay.
That's okay. We can find it. We'll find it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so if you
Okay.
get on, you'll get on the end.
Right, really? Okay. I helped make this happen, right, so.
Let these 2 big guys stand.
Might get refilled.
You guys can scoot over to the right. Okay.
4 or 5.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay,
And stay there.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
All right, thanks a lot for coming.
Alright.
You mind taking him to the back of the room? Prince Pulun will be in the back of the room for more selfies and photos. It's our tradition to make a presentation to presenters who are giving us a presentation for the first time.
Aha,
And after 38 years, we've been repeating a few programs here and there, but not too many, hopefully. And Professor Ma graciously agreed after I saw him in January, I think it was,
I think so, yes.
at the History Museum. And I'll tell you about where you can see him again, I think next week,
Not next week, but the following.
the following, yeah, we'll
It's
we'll get
next
to
week,
that.
the 20th, it's
The
Mar-
20th.
March 20th.
Yeah,
So
I'll
we
get to
have
that.
the Thursday night in the museum. And so, but that, I will be in a panel with another 3 or 4 scholars. Susan will be there, and there will be also 2 scholars talking about Japan and some other Asian countries' participation in the World's Fair. So, I believe they're gonna be a good drink and some food. So, welcome to come over there on Thursday night on the March 20th.
Back up.
Professor Ma, if you'll come over here.
Sure.
For 38, going on 39 years, we've been given a presentation
Nice.
plaque with the World's Fair Society logo in it, which is kind of cool, I thought, when I first got one,
All right.
for a first-time presenter, and
Okay.
I'll shake your hand.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations and thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay. it's not-
Thank you, thank you. Well, thanks a lot. Well, actually, it's, I'm gonna teach a class about the World's Fair in China in the fall 2025 at WashU. So if any one of you guys is interested, you can feel free to join our, events. I can send information to put that on your newsletter, propaganda
I
materials.
could come and visit my son who's down in southern China.
Okay, sure, yes, and also, yeah, that's actually, this is for real. All right, so
Or I could do it by Zoom.
no, I mean, if any one of you is interested, we can think about maybe a tour to China, right?
Ooh,
Right, and maybe because the Shanghai, they also held this 2010 World's Fair in Shanghai, and then after that they built a. You went there. You're there. Yes, yes, yes. I was there too. Right. So they have a museum. They have a World's Fair museum. So maybe we can go there together. I'm happy to be your tour guide.
I first want to show you some of the literature. This book is for sale in the History Museum, and it's got 7 different essays about the World's Fair. And we've heard from the authors of 2 of them, Professor Ma being the second, and last month about the technology of the fair. And from his presentation back in January, he talked about Gateway to the East, a presentation that he, I am on camera, okay, that he gave about a year ago. And
Right,
and
a curated.
And this is part of the dynasty and some of their legacies. And I just want to let you know, the Bruce in Australia is a member of the society.
Nice.
And I've communicated with him, and yes, he has a really good collection out there in far western Australia, about as far west as you can go.
Okay.
And 90% of Australia lives in the southeast corner.
Okay.
So I'll just keep talking with my cameraman here. I thought that was a great program, very interesting, and I learned a lot. Anybody else? I wanted to mention that I didn't write it on this one, but I did just briefly mention that next Thursday, the 20th, at the History Museum, he'll be part of a panel on Asia and the World's Fair. Go to the mohistory.org website, and if you have any questions, you can ask Karen. She can tell you all about it, I'm sure. Karen Gehring is in the upper hierarchy level. I forgot your official title of the History Museum management.